I'm ZSH Plays, welcome back to San Bernardino Zoo, where we've mainly been building beautiful, natural-looking habitats like these, but today, that changes. We're building a huge, ultra-modern facility for giant and red pandas, based on one of the coolest buildings I've ever seen. We're going to be building it here, just behind the desert house, and in between the Indian forest and Africa. Let's go! Here's the building site for what I'm calling the Panda Garden. I've got the space requirements for the giant and the red panda marked out there. It might look like we've got a lot of space, but believe me, we are going to fill it. Now, what are we going to fill it with? Well, I've had a photo in my inspo folder, or a selection of photos, for over a year now of an absolutely amazing building. And to be honest, I've been kind of scared to attempt to build it, because it's going to be a lot more complex than the buildings that I normally do. It's at Disney's Epcot's in the USA. It's a giant slab of 1970s futurism, which they built in the mid-1980s. It's still there today, although they've changed it a bit. It was called the Living Seas. It's this absolutely amazing modernist structure. These days it's called, I think, Nemo and Friends, and it's like a Finding Nemo theme. But originally it was more of a sort of sciencey water research base. I'm not going to be taking any influence from the inside of it, of course, but externally, that is what we're going to be building. Shape-wise, the front of the building is absolutely amazing. That's what really caught my eye. And then we've got various circular structures behind it. And we're going to start building it now with the roof. We're going to be making a lot of use of the circle trick in this build because there's a lot of circles going on. And to make it more manageable, we're going to be doing it in 4 different pieces. So the roof, and then the first section of the walls, then the second section of the walls, and then the entrance. And then once the building is done, we're going to be building a garden to surround the whole area, so that it sort of sets the flavour for the scene that is to come. Now, both the pandas live in China, of course, so I wanted a sort of Chinese theme for the garden, but with having such a modernist structure for the actual habitat, I didn't want to build a traditional Chinese garden because that's really going to clash. So what we're going to build is a modernist version of a traditional Chinese garden. It's going to be very broad strokes. I've spoken to my friend Romana Palacios, who knows a lot more about gardens and plants than I do, and I've done a little bit of research, just looked into sort of the main kind of themes that they have, lots of water, rocks, and nice views. They try to frame the views as well, although that's going to be very difficult to frame in an enormous building like this, but that is what's going to surround this, so that when people come out of the Indian forest or Madagascar or the entrance to Africa, then the scene for this habitat is set, so it's like its own discrete area. So what are we doing here? We're putting the roof in, and what we need to think about is that we are essentially building the roof, i.e. the externals of the building, and the ceiling and the internals of the building at the same time. So we're going to get some nice neutral colours to serve as the walls and the ceiling. And then we've got the more interesting colours on the outside. So we've got that black stripe that goes all the way around the building. And then we've got a dark grey roof. And then inside everything's going to be really neutral, so it can kind of fade into the background and not distract from the habitats. So we're going to bring this all the way across, fill it in with glass, and then copy it over here using the mud pillar technique. And now we can spin it round and get the circular roof built. So we'll start placing these down. This might be the most expensive build I've ever built. I actually ran out of money at one point, had to let the zoo run for a bit so that my funds built back up. And I've got another tip about making more money in franchise mode that I just discovered later on in the video. That's the first couple of sections of roof in. I'm going to make a couple of improvements now that I've looked at it, and then we'll carry on. As you can see, the roof section is made up of 2 sections of concrete, and I've left a little gap in between both of them, which is recessed slightly. And this is what the ceiling's going to look like. Really happy with that. That looks really cool. The ceiling in the original building doesn't have any glass in it because it's essentially a theme park ride, so you don't want any light in there to spoil all the lighting. There's a massive aquarium in there as well, but I've put glass in here so we can get some natural light in so the pandas don't spend their entire lives without seeing the sun. And now we're going to move on and do the walls. The walls feature one of my favourite architectural motifs, which is when you have alternating columns, one recessed, so you get this really nice textured look. This is taken directly from the original, but it's actually something that I've used numerous times in the zoo already, like in the hippo house and the night house. Basically any excuse I have to use this technique I will do, because I just love the way it looks. So we're just going to continue this along the whole stretch of wall until we end up with another piece, and then we can make another circle with this. The ground floor of the building isn't circular. It's got a really interesting, almost like a shell kind of shape to it, but we need to use circles to make it. And then we're going to start breaking the circles down and turning them into the proper shape. We're also going to put some windows in the walls as well to get even more sunlight in. We'll put one more in here, and then we'll start breaking this circle down so we can get the real shape of the building in. So what we're going to do is essentially delete half of this circle, So we'll go all the way along here, and then we'll go all the way along here as well. And once we've got rid of half of it, we'll select the original piece we used to make the circle and move it across to the other side here. That's where the entrance for the guest is going to go, that path there. And then we'll make another circle going round this side. And once that's done, we can combine the two circles together. And we end up with this. Bit rough at the moment, but this is where the building's going. We'll do a little bit of tidying up on the entrance part, and you can see just how big and impressive this building is. Alright, that was the easy bit. Now we need to do the complicated bit. So the entrance to this building is a series of spirals with all sorts of cool artwork on it in the original, which I'm going to be replacing with a plant wall. And this is the part of the building which is why I first saw this building about a year ago and haven't attempted to build it since, but we are going to achieve it today. So what I'm doing is creating a curve at the top of this wall here. This is going to gradually rise along here and then snake down at the end to form a sort of decline down towards the bottom. So we're going to be using these plaster blocks. I've spun them round the other way so that they are thinner in the direction we're looking at them in, so we can get more detail in here. I'm just kind of freestyling this, looking at the reference photo and trying to get the curve the same. And we're just going to keep adding more and more blocks and slightly shifting each one until we get down to the ground level. We should end up with something that looks really sleek. You know, we love a sinuous curve on this channel. And we'll keep copying these plaster bricks down until it is all done. There we go. Now we need to make one last circle to base the entrance off of. This is the really complicated bit. This part of the building here is essentially two interconnected spirals which not only go around in a circle but stretch from the top of the wall pretty much almost down to the ground, and there's another circle inside it. This was really difficult to work out how to build. Somehow we'll manage it. So at the moment this is the shape it's going to be, but it's all at the same level, and later on we're going to turn this into a downward spiral that connects with the ground. Next up we'll do the plant wall. We're going to start it off with these tropical plant panels, and then later on we'll put in a load of different grasses, Yorkshire fog grass and things like that to make it more interesting. So it's not just the same piece over and over again. And we're going to put a flower bed along the bottom as well. In the original, this is a really cool piece of art, like the sun descending into the ocean, but the ocean isn't really appropriate for pandas, and the whole sort of rising sun thing is more Japanese than Chinese, so I decided to put a plant wall in instead. Slightly off-white concrete and bright green foliage is one of my favourite combinations in this game, so that made a lot of sense to change it with anyway. And now we're going to start turning this entrance into the downward spiral I mentioned. So basically I take the top piece, rotate it slightly towards the ground, and then move it down so that it continues on from the piece before it. And as we keep going round, we'll just keep doing that until it gets to the height that we want. The recessed columns motif is going to poke out over the top, and then once we've done it all, we'll go in and move all of those down to the correct height, so we end up with this whole shell style kind of spiral. One of the unique things about this building I noticed when I was looking at it is that normally in a building you want to highlight the entrance so everyone knows where to go. In this building, the entrance is essentially hidden behind first a garden with a sign and then the spiral that we're creating here. I thought that was interesting, and there we go. We don't do the craziest builds on this channel, but that's probably the most complicated thing that we've ever built, I reckon. Now we just need to make a few adjustments to this entrance here, and then we can join the spiral onto the entrance so that the guests can actually get into the building. We'll add some bamboo in, and then it's time for Franchise Masters. So something I just discovered is that the bigger your zoo gets, the more you can charge people for food and drink. When we first started this zoo, I set all the prices for food and drink and merchandise as high as I could without the guests getting angry and refusing to buy it. And last week I was able to raise the prices of everything that the zoo sells by between $1 and $3, and everyone was still happy, presumably because the zoo is absolutely massive now. All the income you get from that can make all the difference in funding a zoo as big as this. So now you know. Let's get back to the build. Alright, we've almost finished with the entrance here. We're just going to put this flower bed in front of the plant wall and get some nice plants in there, and then we'll move on and take care of the Chinese garden. So we're going to use these plaster blocks again, run them along here, and then curve them in to meet the wall by the entrance. You can see we've got some glass doors in there now. What do we do before these glass doors were added into the game? We're going to place a load of mulch down along here, nice and simple, and then we're going to use the grapevines to create a sort of second level of foliage. I've never used these grapevines as grapevines, but they make great bushes. And then it's onto the garden. So we're going to take a section of the water terraces and use this to create an ornamental lake. and then also use it to sort of build up the area around here so that it feels complete and there's a continuity with the water terraces, and we'll change the color scheme to match with the building that we've got here. You can see my attempt at creating some of the weathered limestone rocks that are such a feature in Chinese gardens there. I was actually quite happy with that, but once I started combining it with all the modernism going on everywhere else, it just looked really weird. So we're not going to use those. They'll be going in a bit. And as well as the large garden this entire habitat sits in, we're also going to build a little rock garden for the sign for this habitat and area to go in, using one of Christina's amazing fonts as we do so often. And then we're going to use a mixture of large real rocks and small faux rocks to make a kind of gravel rock bed here. I really like how this looks when it's done. It also enables us to raise the sort of terrain inside the rock bed without actually having to do any terrain work, which is always useful. And speaking of rocks, just in case you've been living under one this week, you may have missed the announcement that Planet Coaster 2 is coming out this autumn, which is very exciting. Planet Coaster was before my time, so I've never played it, but I'm really looking forward to checking that out. The trailer looks really cool, so we'll certainly be taking a look at that on the channel a bit closer to release. But back to Planet Zoo, we need to get some water into this lake here, and it's raised off the floor, so we're going to use the glass barriers to do that. We'll just roughly put these in, get them as low as we can, and put the water in, and then we'll raise the concrete around it so that it forms the lake. Time for everyone's favourite part of Planet Zoo, the pathing. So we need to get paths all the way around here. And as you can see, we are right up against the back of the Tiger Temple. So we're going to remove some of the staff paths that the staff use to get into the Tiger Temple. I'm going to change the position of the door into the habitat, and then we'll get these nice paths all the way around here and start joining them up to Madagascar. So we want the guests to be able to get in here from the Indian forest and Madagascar, as well as a back entrance from the entrance to the African area as well. And we're just going to draw these paths in. I very rarely use gridded paths these days. I find if you just use normal paths, you can get them exactly where you want. And when you get the little gaps, and the longer you play this game for, the better you get at not having gaps, you can just cover them up with decals now. There's a decal that pretty much exactly matches this particular path. And obviously if you use a plain path, you can just use plaster panels or whatever. And any little gaps like the green one you can see on the left there, we'll just cover those up with decals and get rid of it. We'll get the paths going around this little circle here. This is going to be the outside area for the red pandas, because they're going to have access to indoors and outdoors. The giant pandas will purely be in one enormous habitat on the inside. And here you can see those decals I was talking about, which will cover up this little line here between the two paths. On the other side of the garden, we're going to have another sinuous curve, which takes the guests around to Madagascar. And we're going to use this gravel rock mixture again to fill a bed in there, and we'll put some little plants in. And we're going to use them again to create an island in the middle of the ornamental lake. This is the most obviously Chinese garden-inspired area of this garden. Really wanted to go all out with this, and it wouldn't be possible to make it look as Chinese as this without the use of Romano Palacios's bonsai pack from the workshop. So thanks for creating that and sharing that, because these bonsai trees are so cool, and they really help to sell the Chinese/modernist vibe that we're going for in this garden. We've got this big wall here which I'm using to cover up the indoor habitat for the tiger and make sure this whole area feels cohesive. And I want to cover this with a photo wall, which is going to be tricky because this wall is curved and the billboards aren't. So what we're going to do is take one of the larger billboards and spin it on its side so that we've got a thinner area to work with and we can get the curve better. We'll place one of those in here, and then we'll copy it across and rotate it around as best we can to fit it in with the curve of the wall. It takes a lot of adjusting, but eventually we can get it just right where you can't tell that this is essentially a flat billboard or a sequence of flat billboards arranged along a curved wall. It looks really good. The only problem is getting one image that's on two billboards which are the wrong way round. We did this way back in the water terraces when we built the red crown crane habitat. I've got a tutorial on this as well. If you want to understand exactly how to do this, you can watch that. But we're basically going to take a screenshot of a panda that I just took in sandbox mode and spread it across multiple billboards. And then we're going to recolor it so it feels more like the kind of vibe that you would get in a zoo. You'll see that in the end cinematics. The last thing we're going to do today is get some panda footprints into the habitat to direct guests to that elusive entrance that we built earlier and make sure they know where to go. So just a few art pieces, a bit like we did in the night house, and we'll just make some cute panda footprints in black and white and lead them from the Indian forest up to the entrance to the panda garden. This is probably the most work I've ever put into one episode, I think. I've spent about 6 days building this. It has taken so long, but I'm really happy I took the time because I absolutely love how this building looks. Let's check it out. Consider me happy with this, very happy indeed. I love how it reflects in the water in the ornamental lake here. This is the little entrance garden that the guests will walk past. Really like the sign and that plant wall, and you can see the results of the photo wall here as well. And we've got our little island with the little panda statue and all the bonsai trees as well. Next week, we're going to be going inside to deal with this lovely roof, nothing else. So we need to get 2 habitats in here, and we're going to do them both in the same episode for the giant and the red pandas. Let's take a look at it from above. I think an animal like the giant panda and the red panda deserve something as monumental as this in the zoo. I don't think I even showed you the back, but there's a little shelter there. That's where the exit is going to be that takes guests out to Africa. Thanks for watching as always, guys. I'll see you next week where we will put both the habitats in. Before that, we'll be touring Rudi Rennkamel's Zoo Sicily in a few days' time. Thanks for watching as always, and I'll see you soon. Bye.